Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending where you are, and welcome to the fourth and final day of our 10th annual Canadian Restaurant Investment and Leadership Summit. Once again, for those of you who are joining us, welcome back. For those who are here for the first time, my name is Jacob Mancini, and I will be your virtual MC for the balance of the session today. Again, before we get started, I want to go through a couple of housekeeping items and a bit of background. First of all, this is an hour and 15-minute long presentation today, or panel discussion today. So we have some time for the discussion and some audience Q&A. And a reminder, you can ask questions by typing them into the question area of the control panel. Second point, the session will be recorded, and we will send out a link next week so that you can have access to the details. We'll also later on this afternoon, for those who haven't joined us yet, be sending a link to download the 2020 Canadian Restaurant Industry Review with that has a bunch of data and insight and facts on the industry. And finally, at the end of the session today, we will have a survey that pops up about 30 seconds long, and hope that you can provide some feedback to us for the event. Again, just a bit of background on the summary for those who are joining us for the first on the summit. Pardon me, for those who are joining us for the first time. This is our 10th anniversary, as I mentioned, of which CWB Franchise Finance has been hosting this event. As you know, we normally try to get together and have this event in person and find ways to network and catch up. In lieu of being able to do that this year, we decided to sort of focus on 4 of our most popular sessions and bring them to you over the course of this week in a series of virtual presentations and panels. I can say so far that we've been very pleased and happy with the turnout. We've had more than 550 different individuals who have logged in for at least one of the sessions so far, which is awesome turnout, and certainly hoping that you're all getting something interesting or insightful from these discussions. Before I do start, I want to again take a moment to thank our sponsors for this. Their support and participation obviously is critical. And we really appreciate it. Our platinum sponsors for this event, Chicken Farmers of Canada and Cisco. Our gold sponsors are Attitude Marketing, Castles, and Smooth Commerce. Our silver sponsors are Hub International, Dairy Farmers of Canada, Samsung, and Sodos. And our bronze sponsor, Foodbuy, Gating Contractors, and Lavazza. Once again, thank you to the NPD Group, who is our premier research sponsor, and thank you to fsSTRATEGY, who is our contributing sponsor for the Chain Restaurant Industry Review that'll come around later today. So let's now get ready to dive into our panel for today, which is technology in food service. And as we've been hearing about all week, and as we all know, technology has been playing a significantly larger role, increased role in the food service industry over the last few years, and has become even more critical and more relevant in sort of today's current environment. So over today's discussions, our panelists are going to explore how food service technology has evolved, especially over the last few months, and where we think it's going to go in the future. So on that note, so first of all, special thanks to Smooth Commerce for sponsoring today's session, and I'm going to pass it over now to today's moderator, Robert Carter, who's going to introduce the panelists and lead the discussion. So Rob, over to you.
Jacob, thank you very much. Yeah. I'm there.
Okay, thanks Rob.
Okay, thanks Jacob. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for today's session on technology. It's such a shame that we all can't be together as we have been over the last number of years, but thanks for joining us virtually, and I'm excited to moderate today's technology panel. And on a side note, really looking forward to getting together with everybody once this COVID craziness has finally subsided and we can all start to socialize again. But in the meantime, thanks for joining us. So we've got a lot of areas that we want to cover in today's conversation. So I'm going to jump right into it and introduce our panelists. So first of all, let me introduce Manoj Jasra. He is the Chief Marketing and Digital Officer for Northland Properties. So Manoj, can you, hey, there you are. Thanks for joining us in sunny Vancouver. Also joining us, special guest, Royal Nasager. He is the VP of Marketing from St. Louis Bar and Grill. Royal, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Nice to see you, Robert.
Also joining us today, we have Dan Nielsen. Dan is the president of Attitude Marketing and A2 Media as well. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Robert. Nice to be here.
We also have Brian Deck, who is the CEO of Smooth Commerce. Brian, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Robert. Thanks for having me.
So you gentlemen are here today to talk about the impact of technology, particularly in the food service industry. And as we know, technology is really transforming the food service industry. And the impact of technology was really starting to show in the food service industry prior to the impact of COVID, but obviously has been really accelerated now with this crazy COVID impact to our industry. And the digital door, as I like to call it, the consumer's access to the digital platform through restaurants and groceries and whatnot, has really exploded. And within the food service industry, the $90 billion food industry, pre-COVID, consumers using that digital door for ordering was around 6%, but has really accelerated to about 18%. So, the dollar value and the orders and whatnot just going through that digital door really exploded. Not only has the technology from a consumer standpoint started to transform the industry, but also the technology from an operator standpoint. And here at StratonHunter, we've been working with our clients pretty aggressively over the last little while to make sure that they've got a good, solid tech implementation plan to take advantage of how technology is really identifying growth opportunities for the food service industry, as well as those growth opportunities moving forward. I liken the impact of this technology, particularly within the consumer touch points, similar to the retail world of about 10 years ago when the retail environment started to change into that omni-channel situation. So my first question to kick off this discussion, in this shift to digital and the online ordering, in our restaurant industry, which is primarily bricks and mortars, is this transformation and the impact, is this good for our industry overall? And so Manoj, why don't we start off with you?
Yeah, thank you. You know what? I think it is good for the industry. I think things that happen to industries are driven by consumer behavior, and I think we have to embrace those opportunities. Like you said, like this shift that we saw in retail, and it continues to happen. Like we continue to see bricks and mortar locations go out of business because they've transferred all of that kind of capability and consolidation to digital platforms. So I think, yeah, necessity really drives kind of the approach there. So if I look at like what's happening today, like the importance of health and safety, the importance of convenience and speed, the importance of like contactless capabilities. So like I said, it should be something we should adopt and embrace. Unfortunately, a lot of us are playing catch up in this place as well. Like we aren't all QSRs who had this kind of capability in place for a number of years. And then you had some great restaurants like BP's had online ordering available for a number of years as well, right? But I think that and it's a little bit interesting how we have to tackle this, right? So we have third-party platforms which we rely on for demand, hugely important in our ecosystem, but really tight on those margins that we get from them as well. So great for that. Yes. But I think the reality will be is that humans will continue to desire contact. And so I think dine-in will continue to be the lion's share. And we saw that this summer with pent-up demand. We saw it with patio season.
Sure.
But I think if we can build our own platforms, we can leverage our databases, our content, our marketing offers, the ability to execute really effectively. I think it's going to be a really big business for us going forward. But in order for us to be successful, right now everyone's scrambling, right? Everyone's trying to do as many things as we can. But if we don't put really good attention and focus to this area, it's going to be hard for us to gain the type of adoption we need for online ordering for it to be successful. So I think it's going to take a lot of key prioritization around that. And then looking at consumer behavior, their feedback, their expectations. I think we have to craft very specific menu items, products, and offerings, and the whole end-to-end execution of the touch points that in order for us to be successful as well. So I think it's very important. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And just remind us, Northland Properties, your brands and your banners, you want to just walk through just so everybody's aware?
Yeah, it's a conglomerate of different companies, restaurants, hotels, and resorts. So I'll leave the hotels and resorts to the side for a second, but on the restaurant side, it's the Moxie's group, Moxie Bar and Grill, Chops Steakhouse and Bar, Denny's Canada, Shark Club, Sports Bar and Grill. And then we've also got Boulevard in Vancouver, awesome restaurant there, and the Rockford Grill. So a variety of different restaurants across Canada.
Yeah, so heavily skewed to full service. So the impact was pretty dramatic for you folks overall.
Yeah, correct. So it's like we saw it coming. We didn't really have the capabilities in place and had to really react to the market. But I think we put in some great systems that allowed us to catch up and then be fairly successful in the market as well.
Yes, and Royal, just reviewing your bio, you've had a history within the retail segment. I think you were going through the transformation of the omni-channel strategy, and now here you are leading the brand St. Louis Bar and Grill. Tell us a little bit about your view on this changing landscape and the impact of the online ordering. Is this good for the restaurant industry?
Yeah, I'd agree with Manoj that I think it is good. And when it comes to omni-channel, where it was multi-channel 10 or 15 years ago, it's really about closing the loop for consumers and being where they want to be and having multiple touch points. In my experience, the lifetime value of consumers, the more channels that you are able to engage with them in, the better off you are, akin to a high tide raising all ships. And we went through it as well, not only with the shift to digital and e-commerce in retail, but also experiencing the shift to aggregators like Amazon and how to navigate that space and how to maintain, I think, brand awareness, but also brand integrity when you lose some of that control like you do with some of the third-party delivery channels. So I think it is a case of just having more consumer touch points, more opportunities to engage with consumers. And at the end of the day, we've seen funny things in the retail space as well, where you look at pure play guys like Amazon now getting into the brick and mortar space again to have that 360 approach. So sure. I think the mistake is to carve out consumers or guests and say one is a digital guest, one is brick and mortar, or one is at the expense or cannibalizes the other. I think you have to look at them as a 360. With respect to the shift in consumption habits, it's a trend line that we were already seeing, and obviously COVID just accelerated it greatly. A lot like you're saying with retail and e-commerce 10, 15 years ago, but also Great Britain, Europe, they were on this trend a lot earlier. Yes. So it's really just forced everybody to play catch up, as Manoj said a little bit, but accelerated, I think, consumers, whether they're comfortable or not, when it's the only game in town, you're really compelled to interact with that channel. So.
Yeah, exactly. And Dan, from your perspective at Attitude Marketing, tell us a little bit about what you do at Attitude Marketing, and then your view on the changing dynamics of the industry moving more towards a digital format.
Well, I'd say we're obviously now on the supplier side for most of your audience today. So we're here to help basically with that digital transformation. So it's about using intelligence and insights to better target, to get that client acquisition funnel working, have the loop include loyalty, and make sure that we're getting a full brand experience. So we're an agency that helps with that. To answer the question, I would say, is it good for the industry? Is almost a moot point at this point. It is the industry. It's happening. So I mean, I think, and the consumer's getting used to it. It's not just the fact that we have the capacity to target the consumer. The consumer's kind of liking it. All of a sudden, they're getting advertised to in a way that listens to them, and the quality of the ads, the quality of the engagement is increasing. So they're getting a little more finicky, and they're maybe a little more choosy. So I think, you know, and to Royal's point, the aggregator, or, you know, the third party, the go-between is probably the biggest factor that this industry is going to have to deal with. The Googles, the Amazons, the delivery services, you know, the Skip the Dishes, the Uber Eats, because you know, the danger is the loss of contact with the client, and
Yes.
to forego the building of the brand experience, and to commoditize the food. So there's a lot of things that are going to be at play, but the good news is that, you know, the tools are amazing, and what we're
Yes.
able to do today in terms of being able to, I think the idea that we broadcast to the consumer that day is done. We're much more listening to them, not directly, but via our interactions, and
Sure.
and the blurring the lines between online experience and even brick and mortar. How many people here have the QR code menu now? The QR
Yes.
code is going back to a web property. You can put first party data tagging on that. You can then remarket to those people. There's a really fascinating way that we can continue to have a dialogue with consumers. So it's very exciting, but it's you got to kind of get on. You pretty much have to get on the bandwagon, because that's just today's reality.
That's the future, and we're going to touch on the massive amount of consumer data that we now have access to in a little bit. But Brian, I just want to hear from you quickly. Just give us a little overview on Smooth and what you folks do, and then tell us how your business was impacted, you know, when the whole COVID thing started to change the landscape of the restaurant industry.
Sure. So Smooth Commerce is a commerce and engagement platform. We focus on providing our clients with their own branded white label program. Primarily what that looks like is digital ordering for pickup and delivery through apps and web. We also have loyalty and engagement tools built into the platform, focusing on things like mobile messages, email communication, and other channels of communication. And we're doing a lot of work, and have been doing a lot of work over the years in-store contactless. So to your question around how did COVID impact us, Smooth Commerce was positioned, you know, really quite perfectly actually to help our existing clients, but also our new clients that we've brought onto the platform since COVID, in really adapting to the needs of the consumer and the needs of their businesses. You know, we were really busy in the March, April, May timeframe. We're still busy. In fact, our platform numbers are 6 times what they were in January in terms of the increase in transaction volumes, orders, customers, locations. It's really quite significant in terms of the increase for this year. But a lot of the things we're doing were the same things we were doing before COVID. We only had some small modifications in terms of, you know, now instead of just doing a delivery order, we're doing a delivery order with, you know, specify where do you want the, you know, the order left. Do you want it on your doorstep? Do you want it on the chair beside your door? Like those are the small tweaks, but for all intents and purposes, what we were doing before COVID is exactly what we're doing now.
Yeah, interesting. And so good news from a business standpoint for you folks overall. Interested to understand from Manoj and Royal, you know, as more of your business is moving to this digital door strategy or platform, what are some of the strategies from an operator standpoint are you deploying to get a broader audience in the digital world? How are you connecting more with consumers and getting consumers to take action, as the model from a bricks and mortar to the online has really changed, particularly for the full service restaurant segment? Manoj, maybe you want to kick that off?
Yeah, thank you. You know what? I think it's a variety of different opportunities, and it's actually shifted the way we've had to build our overall marketing strategy in terms of the mix with different mediums. For us, like in order to get really big engagement and adoption of our product services, I think digital and social for us lead the way, but for sure. But it's a very, very busy space out there in the world of social and digital. And I'll tell you why. It's that we're not just competing with brands, we're actually competing with the attention of all these individual contributors who are creating more content and as good of content that we are as well. So how do you cut across that when you get like a second to grab someone's attention? So one of the ways that we have heavily invested into this space, and I will continue in our group to make investments into what I'm just calling like a bit of a content factory, to really understand the speed and timeliness in terms of how we have to create content and the delivery of that, understanding the kind of the micro events that happen in a given year. Not that the election is a micro event, but getting ready for the takeout and delivery for the election was like a strategy that we had to get ready for, right? So I think that's going to be important, and having like a calendar view of preparing for that. And even like timing of content, like when you deploy it from a time of day is hyper important. And the big thing for me in the world of technology and marketing is that I don't think anyone should strive for perfection. I think it just has to be authentic. I think that's really, really important. We have to now really talk about the variety of content that we're creating. Like obviously food quality for us is important, especially as full service. I think there's sometimes a lack of belief that a chain could put off high quality food, and we want to really show that we can with our chef and food stories. Right. And then we want to really talk about some of the custom experiences that we are able to provide in terms of like our most premium restaurants. We are tapping heavily into promotion opportunities with influencers, and I like to use the word influencer clusters versus just one or two influencers. And I think that's a way of driving share of voice and reach with their audiences rather than trying to build their own. When I look at like cost of acquisition, typical digital things like Google paid search and local advertising still are masters at low cost of acquisition. So we are investing into that. Native platforms within OpenTable, still a great partner there, building success as well. And then really building strategic partnerships with both our technology partners to help us build marketing automation to send promotions, offers, cross-sell, upsell, those types of opportunities to build loyalty that way. Yes. And we've had to actually reach and tap the shoulders of our friends that are outside of our vertical, say, you know what, how can we partner with retailers out there, tap into their databases and help them and help us drive demand as well. You know what, we're suffering a little bit, and obviously some of the folks in grocery and other retail verticals are not, and they've actually been really helpful in trying to market our messages appropriately there as well. Yeah, and then the last one I'll just leave you with, would be, I think as the world is noisier, digital spend continues to go higher. You can see that from how much the stock price of Snap has increased over the last kind of 5 or 6 months. I think building your own databases to really have a kind of one-to-one relationship will continue to be a very important area that we will definitely invest into as well. Yeah, interesting. And Royal, from your perspective, it seems like a lot of activity going on with your brand and you folks. And so how are you guys connecting more with consumers in this digital world?
Yeah, a lot of dittos on what Manoj had to say. I think that, I mean, it's pretty evident that there's been a big shift online, a greater propensity in terms of time and space in the digital community, and with all that comes a lot more noise. So you need to be, I think, a lot more analytical in terms of how you choose to connect and where you choose to spend your dollars. And with that comes a shift in media mix. And for me, I'll go back to the analogy of it being full circle, that while we still have dine-in, takeout, you know, whether it's through, again, third-party aggregators or online or just folks calling in, we try to close that loop where we drive traditional dine-in guests to takeout and delivery, and vice versa, taking our off-premise guests and trying to push them into restaurants, looking at them as really one customer or one guest rather than segmenting them out. So it really just requires a greater focus, I think, on the analytics and the shift with the media and trying to cut through what is a ton of noise, especially launching new initiatives that are essentially pure play digital components for us. So we've launched a grocery program, which is, again, just through our digital properties. We're launching meal kits. So really, how do you cut through the clutter of what is already a very, very crowded space? And then there's so much content from a UGC perspective that it's really trying to maintain as much as you can some semblance of oversight of the brand and the voice of the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you both touched on the competitive nature of the digital platforms overall. And when we look across the industry, everybody's launching some sort of digital program direct to consumer, from the broadline distributors, from even your food vendors, grocery, launching restaurant meals. This is becoming a hyper competitive environment as more consumers are moving to that online, and the lines are becoming blurred. The convenience of food for a consumer is much easier than it's ever been. So, Dan, from your perspective, and you hear about this intense competition in the digital world, how does a brand win in this digital frontier?
Sorry. I think the first thing to recognize is that you can't afford to sort of rest on your laurels. King today, pauper tomorrow. The other thing about digital is it all changes. I think we've all gradually finally got a hold of search engine optimization and stuff like that. But then along come things like Alexa and Google Home and stuff like that, where you can't afford to be number 3 in search anymore. You need to be number 1 because they're not going to mention a bunch of choices. So in our intelligence department, my friend JC likes to say that SEO is like a garden. It may look beautiful today, but if you don't weed it, it's going to look terrible tomorrow. So I think the other thing is to just be constantly. I agree with Royal. Constantly in the analytics, constantly looking at the data, and letting the data do the work for you too. The other reality is that as we start using the data management platforms that we have available to us, the capacity of machine learning and artificial intelligence to tell you the true story is quite amazing. So you start with your assumptions, but then let the algorithms do some of the heavy slugging. You'd be amazed at what kind of segmentation can be revealed by just putting the campaigns out there and paying attention to what kind of performance you get from them. And the negative performance may lead you to some huge success because the data is all good. So I think it's really about being aware and being on top of what's going on and being ready to change because it's constantly evolving.
Yeah, and Brian, from your perspective, you've already commented on how your business volumes increased dramatically, and you must have insight into different strategies operators are using to win. What are some of the best practices you see that are helping drive operators to connect and get customers to order more, to interact more?
Well, I think first and foremost, Robert, one of the things that we've seen a huge shift in terms of restaurants thinking is really just where they need to spend their money. We've been talking to restaurants for years about the importance of marketing and customer engagement. And there's historically, more restaurants than not didn't have smart marketers like Manoj and Royal that were on the team focusing on this all day, every day. And they just really were waiting for the customers to come in. They may have had a great menu, they may have great branding, but they just weren't doing engagement. Dan mentions data, and that's actually something we focus on a lot now is how do we help our clients with monetizing that data? Part of our mission at Smooth is really two main missions. One is lift and one is shift. We help our clients with doing things with the data to be able to increase their transactions, increase the customer frequency, grow the basket size, right? And create better personalized and meaningful experiences which improve your customer engagement. All things that help with lift. And then on the shift side, you don't need to talk to a restaurant about how expensive third-party marketplace delivery can be, right? They're all suffering from, like, the consumer is proven the demand of that. It's not going away. That was already happening pre-COVID. So, delivery is something, it's a convenience, more so now than ever. People are not going to restaurants as much, or in some cases at all. And so, the shift has either been to grocery or delivery, right? And so what we're doing with our customers is we're helping them to really pull more orders onto their own white label programs. Like in the case of Northland, with Denny's, we launched, the Denny's.ca ordering platform after COVID, and been working with Manoj and his team around how to engage the customers. And in fact, when you do look at the ROI on doing the delivery through your own channel versus the marketplace, it's absolutely staggering. One stat I'll leave you with on this thought, because a lot of people think, well, why if I put my own app or my own website out there, will people use it? Data shows that 70% of consumers will order and want to order from a brand's own web or app. And so there's a huge amount of opportunity here in terms of doing it yourself and doing it right. And then to Dan's point, using that data to really maximize your ROI.
If I may, Robert, I would just add to that, and I think that's all the more important once you get away from QSR. Like if you're in full service, I think that is 100% true, because you've got a totally different loyalty approach, right? So
sure.
people's I don't think that we should discount out of all of this the amount of attention that has been brought to local and supporting local, and so there's a great deal of value built into building your own little infrastructure.
Yeah, interesting point. And Brian, similar to what you're seeing even within our StratonHunter data, the path to purchase on how consumers are choosing restaurants is really changing, and it constantly comes up that they're going to the website of that brand or that food shop first, and then going down to other digital platforms as they make that decision process. I'm also interested in understanding from the panel's view, what role does customer loyalty and loyalty programs play in this digital world? We've just recently seen that Skip the Dishes has launched a loyalty program, as they look at the market becoming more competitive. Maybe Dan, you can kick it off. What role does a loyalty program play in the new digital world for restaurants?
Well, I think above and beyond sort of the traditional view of what loyalty is, really it's about listening, right? It's what's going to bring people back, what is going to keep them engaged. I think it's funny, but I would add things like frictionless, the buzz is around that. I would say that is absolutely part of loyalty. Because the more that you're listening to what their needs are, the more that you're responding well to the clients, you're going to get loyalty. It doesn't have to be about just throwing points at them or giving them discounts or coupons. I mean, those are all great things, but I really like what Manoj said when he said, be authentic and be listening and make it a bit of a family. Like restaurant in specific is such a cultural phenomenon that it's above just kind of building a traditional brand and broadcasting out there. It's really about creating an atmosphere and a world with your clients. So, and obviously that makes a big difference between but it's also about understanding who your clients are and where they are. Like if it's a first consumer coming in, you're going to be much more about seduction than you are going to be about loyalty, and you're going to be wanting to focus on brand building, but when you get that customer in there, somebody wants to be Norm. They want to walk in and have his beer ready for him, and everybody say, "Hey, Norm." It's really about feeling at home where everybody knows your name. So yeah, I would go beyond the thinking of just throwing coupons at people. I think there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah. And Manoj, from your standpoint or an operator's standpoint, thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts about this one, and I believe that especially full service, and when we have like our brands, which are like the 4 or 5 in between, I think it's actually super tough to build loyalty in a traditional way of building a loyalty platform, like Dan said, with a currency system in between, right? So you have to look at other ways to do that, because otherwise, like they may visit us 3 to 4 times a year. Now, how do I get that 5th, 6th, and 7th visit is a real opportunity? I'm not going to get them to probably come 4 times a week, which I'd love to, but that's probably not likely. So I think I see it in kind of 3 different opportunities. I think it's, to Dan's point, it's improving customer experience across all touch points. There's a communication importance, and then there's a technology, and then there's an operational component. from an operations, like a core perspective, customers want speed, convenience, and then the food has to be freaking awesome, and then the packaging better hold up too. Like there's kind of core table stakes around that. But to me, every experience is another step towards loyalty. So if you fail on those core capabilities, it's hard to say also sign up for my loyalty membership, because they're not going to, because you don't have your table stakes right. And then when I look at communications, I know where my order is. I know when I'll receive it. If there are delays, let me know, kind of thing, and make it real time and make that component frictionless. Because you know what, when there is time that there's a kind of friction within the order, just recover from it elegantly. I think that's critical. Also an example of how to build loyalty with a communication driven approach. And then for looking at from a digital and technology perspective, it's to kind of Royal's point, integrating feedback real time and putting that into your ecosystem is hyper important. If you collect feedback on a monthly basis, it's you might as well not do it. If it's not in the moment or talks about that specific interaction with a specific point, I think that's hyper important. And then how customers experience loyalty is when you don't blanket them all with the same kind of offer, right? We all have different kind of needs, different context in regards to how we want different kind of food delivered to us and experienced. So I think segmentation is hyper important, and then you can do that without having a big loyalty platform. That's just a sense of marketing automation and really having a strong promotional capability. And then after that table stake stuff is done, I think that's where you go into incentives, discounts, currency, gamification. But there's a lot of things that you have to do before you get to kind of true loyalty. And I like, my background is in like at travel and telco, where we built WestJet rewards. It's not like that, right? It's a very different type of loyalty as you kind of move forward into this vertical.
Yeah, and you touched on a number of really good points in terms of the segmentation, understanding that consumer, and then the customization approach. And the digital platform just allows a lot more of that sort of interaction with customers today. And Royal, from your standpoint, you know, what are your thoughts on loyalty? And you know, I think this is going to become a major battlefield over the next, you know, 12 to 24 months for operators.
It will be, and there are a number of table stakes, you know, as described, but I think it needs to be a reimagination of how to utilize loyalty or CRM in general. So, you know, obviously as it becomes a lot more clutter and everybody is becoming much more aggressive in terms of messaging, that segmentation, personalization, all that is going to help in the data mining that a loyalty program or a robust loyalty program will provide. But for me, I also see it as a bit of a Trojan horse. You know, it's an opportunity to get your foot in the door on the technology side. So you know, use the points, the rewards, the bells and whistles potentially in order to get folks to sign up. But then you're getting them on your native channels and interacting with your brand, where you then have a greater opportunity to really manage the interaction and brand experience. And then the points and the rewards, they're kind of gravy above and beyond that, but it really comes down to offering them another channel that provides experience, a seamless point of contact, but that foot in the door to really, I think, get them on board and maybe not the prototypical digital consumers into that space because it really acts as that opportunity, whether they know it or not, to then start communicating with them in that channel.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, one of the key benefits of moving to this digital world is the amount of data that is now being collected on consumers' activities and their behavior. And Manoj, you touched on it in terms of creating segmentation. But Dan, from your perspective, what are we doing with all this data that we now have access to, or what should we be doing with it from an operator standpoint?
Yeah, I think you've hit the key term. I think there's a lot of data, and I think there's a lot of nothing being done with the data. I think, you know, we made the focus about data for so long that we forgot that we need to do something with it. And so, yeah, that's a trick. And you know, it's got to be above just sort of doing some analytics on your site or like I say, I come back to when you have a robust data management platform, what you're really doing is putting the data to work to create better data and to let the algorithms cycle through and to help you with all of the things we've talked about. It's really about, we throw around catchphrases like micro-segmentation. You go, oh yeah, micro-segmentation, that sounds great. But what does it really mean? What it means is I'm listening to you. So, I'm not going to treat Robert with the same sort of messaging as I'm going to treat Royal or as I'm going to treat Brian. Why? Because I'm listening. I'm getting feedback. And in order to do that, you need to plan it. So it's not just that the data is there, it's how are you collecting it? What have you planned your collection of the data to then be actionable? So have you created a user experience on your website that's helping you to segment people? Are you collecting the first party data and throwing it back out there to get a feedback to see whether it's actually valuable or whether it needs to migrate a bit? There's a lot of cool things that we do. I make it sound complicated. It's actually all very doable and very easy. It just takes some thinking ahead of time. So I think really it's not just about collecting data, it's about knowing what you want to do with it and then deciding which of the data, because otherwise you can be swamped. There's a lot of data out there. We probably don't need all of it.
Yeah, no, good point. And Brian, from your standpoint, I think part of the strategy is, the third-party aggregators collect data through their platform, and your clients working with you have direct access to their consumer data. How are you working with your customers to maximize the data and make it actionable?
Well, it's interesting. We see the difference between clients on our platform who are doing something with the data and clients on the platform who are really just, they view the technology as an ordering platform and they put it in place and they don't have somebody actually looking at it on a regular basis. The difference is actually staggering. And we've actually invested in this significantly at Smooth Commerce. We've developed a whole new practice at Smooth Commerce called Client Success. And we've got a group of really intelligent, experienced marketers that are working with our clients now to help them to look at insights, to actually move the dial by, running campaigns and using communication and things like this that are talked about to increase the basket size and frequency with the customers. And it can be quite significant. Like we've seen basket size increase that is as much as 30 or 40%, believe it or not. And that's just by listening to the customer and responding, introducing new products and communicating in effective ways. It was said by all the panelists here, segmentation. That is something that you cannot do by just having your deliveries going through third party. You cannot do segmentation and communication by just, shopping out or outsourcing your delivery. And so what we're really doing more and more of is, drilling down in the data with the clients, helping them to use the data to increase the sales, and it's unbelievable the difference.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's been brought up a couple of times about just listening to the consumer. It reminds me of that old adage about the waiter repeating the order back to the customer, and his tips generally would increase by 75% by just repeating the order back to the customer, just listening to the customer. And it sounds like a lot of that's taking place. Go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, and sorry, the other point to that is we talk about data from a segmentation and a targeting perspective, but it's also interesting that the more that we use some of the tools that are out there, SEO, we used to think about it as being a way to intercept people, but a lot of the insights that we can get through SEO analysis, we're actually using it now. We've created a program called Generator that's about generating a content grid. Manoj was talking before about having this a plethora of content because you need to be out there and be present. It's putting, and exactly what you just said, it's taking the customer's own words and broadcasting it back to them by using search. It's amazing what we can find out. If you think about it, search, Google, is both qualitative and quantitative at the same time. It's actual words that people are using to do their queries, but times billions. So sure. It's quite powerful. So we can actually now not only just use data to target, but we can use it to generate content.
Yes, yeah, interesting.
Robert,
Switching.
if I may quickly, I think one thing just to add on to what Dan's saying and how to actually leverage the data, I think with the way things are changing and are so rapid fire, especially as we're all, I guess, compelled or forced to accommodate or pivot based on legislation and changes in terms of what we can and cannot do in terms of where we look to the data and what we actually choose to leverage. A lot of the time we're really in triage mode. So it's not about taking, reams and reams of data and planning out potentially, multi-year plans or strategies. It's what can we learn very quickly and how can we put that into place and action it immediately. So instead of short, medium, long-term planning, it's really triage, short, medium is about as far as you can go. So yes, that's the beauty of the shift to digital, is you really have access to those real-time analytics so you can make those decisions on the fly, especially as we're dealing with changes in how we are able to operate on the fly as well. So, you're not waiting for Nielsen's ratings or that sort of thing with traditional media mixes. You can actually get it and make changes same day in order to react the same way that, again, the environment is changing based on the unpredictability of everything COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just making businesses smarter because they have greater access and they can make decisions at a much quicker rate overall. Switching gears here, would like to talk a little bit about how technology from an operator standpoint is being used, particularly in this current environment, around communicating to not only customers, but even your staff from a health and wellness standpoint. Obviously, the strong shift in your communication strategies, promoting, safe dining, health and wellness and whatnot. Manoj, maybe you can kick us off. Tell us a little bit about how technology has helped with that sort of structure.
Sounds good. And if you have time at the end for data, I have a couple more points on that later on, as Dan sparked some interest for me on that one. Sure. I believe it's highly important, but I think it's inconsistent right now, and especially in the capabilities of our restaurant vertical. On the guest facing side, in terms of like health and safety technology, I think it hits a few key areas. Communications around pre-order and notifications. I think the communication around that is like, it's another one of those kind of core elements that you just have to be really, really great at. Obviously, contact tracing, we do that at restaurants, and I think we do maybe the best job of it. And for some reason, we're getting highlighted within the government that it's restaurants causing COVID, even though it's not. So that it's because of our elevated contact tracing that we're doing it better than everybody else. So sorry about that, but that's what's happening. But I believe doing that digitally, I think that's the name of the game. So obviously, it's a lot of it's manual right now, but getting into that space is going to be hyper important. Sure. I think back to the notification side of being like getting ready for pickup orders and to remain truly contactless. I think from health and safety, you can tell from a conference perspective, people still have obviously fears of full contact. So I think there's an opportunity for us to be more effective there. And I think payment through like devices and using digital menus, I think that's a kind of a new form of how we're kind of using and communicating that way as well. You can see, especially at some of our busier restaurants, sticking in line is not really as great as it used to be. So I think having digital wait lists, those are critical for us as well. And then from a staff perspective, I think we are trying to implement things where we can communicate to our staff kind of globally at a single given point through mediums that make sense that are real time. So email and SMS and things like that, I think those are becoming heavier importance as well, because I think the world of communication, I think the most important thing is context and timeliness. And then if you could do that across a medium that's relevant to whichever audience, whether that's a staff member or a customer, I think you win very effectively that way. Yes, interesting. Okay, just doing a time check here. We've got about 10 minutes left. So just a reminder to the audience, if you have questions, send those in and we'll go through those questions for the panelists overall. Interested in asking this question. I've asked this question to a number of different panels I've moderated since the impact of COVID. What lessons have you learned
since the impact of COVID and to your business as overall? If you had to summarize a couple lessons that you've learned, Roel, you're smiling, so you've now volunteered yourself to answer first. So,
yeah, great. It's funny, the QR code with it seems like some low-tech technologies have certainly made a resurgence. I actually thought I had invented the QR code paperless menu until I got into the 10,000 other restaurants within a few weeks. But I think really what the consumers have told us is that trust and transparency are at the core of everything we do. And I think what we've had to do is, you know, as someone who's typically very protective of brands that I work with or represent, you know, letting our guests behind the curtain has always been counterintuitive, but letting them behind the curtain, being transparent with respect to what steps and measures you're taking, and that guests are willing to meet you halfway if you make those steps, and that it is not as doom and gloom as all the prognosticating has been in the media reports of, you know, bars and restaurants being at the epicenter of the pandemic. That there's actually a lot of optimism and there's a willingness to come out if, again, you meet them halfway with the messaging and you're very transparent with what you're doing to protect them. So, you know, that consumer confidence and putting safety at the forefront of what we do, and, you know, keeping that in lockstep with strategic business objectives. And that's sort of the short-term, long-term game, is that so much of what we're doing now is reacting in a lot of ways to the environment that is COVID, but there will be life after COVID. And it's important that we're not stepping away from what were important objectives from whichever business you're in pre-COVID, and again, just being caught flat-footed once we're on the other side of this. That said, I really believe that there's going to be a collective COVID PTSD or hangover, if you will, and I think, you know, even when there is a quote-unquote cure or a vaccine, that consumer consumption habits, how they want to engage and interact with brands, will not change that much. So it's really leveraging the learnings as we work through this and continuing to apply them and trying to forecast as much as you can what's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, exactly. Dan, same question to you. What did you say you've learned since the impact of COVID in your business?
One is that our life is now right here. Like this is, yes. I think we've all collectively got a bit of fatigue with this whole format, as magic and as great as it is. It's definitely changed the way that we think. I think somebody mentioned in the previous panel, you know, we've evolved. You know, 10 years. We took a 10-year jump in about a 6-month period.
Yeah.
So for sure, there's been a lot of learning, COVID specific. But even away from COVID, I'd say that our biggest learning is that, you know, the design and the user experience that you put into the development of a web property is no longer about building a website. You know, I think we should take the word site away from our language, because it's really about an information hub. Nobody navigates to a site anymore. We ask a series of questions to which we would like answers. And so we need to really realize that a website is the centerpiece of an entire environment that is going to help you manage everything from client acquisition to brand experience to loyalty to all of it. So sure. The more that it's planned in that way, the better it is. So I think our biggest thing is to really redefine the way that we think about web. You know, we all walk around with these devices in our pockets, and I don't know about you, but my car doesn't have a key anymore. It's my phone that powers it. So yes. There's a rethink of the way that we do things. And web is no longer a computer. It's now in your pocket, and it's a pocket that follows you in the restaurant. And it's neat to see all of the evolution that happens on a regular basis. But I'd say it's evolving so much, but it's also opening up such a wealth of opportunity that it's an exciting period to be in.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Brian, it's the same question. It's a summary.
Sure. There's two things really I'll touch on, but before I do, the restaurant industry as a whole has demonstrated just how resilient, creative, and innovative it is. And we knew that, like, we knew this before, but this has just proven it, you know, even like, you know, without a doubt. I'll give you two things that really have stood out for me in terms of things that we've seen and learned since COVID. One, you know, restaurants, and it was discussed here today, menus are changing, right? Restaurants are now looking at their menus and redoing them. Now, maybe not entirely, so maybe some are not at all, but we've seen it across most of our customers. There's different items, there's packaged goods now, there's frozen items, there's meal kits. And so, you know, the hybridization of the restaurant space and food service in general is actually quite interesting. You're seeing restaurants looking a little bit more like restaurants with the grocery, you know, flavor. The second thing that we've really learned, I think, since COVID, and this was a surprise to me, is just how much the consumer would accept and engage in delivery and ordering through digital in channels that we didn't think that they would. Like, we had fine dining restaurants come to us when the shutdown happened. This was a category of food service that we never approached as a provider, and we never really heard from as a potential client type. And since COVID, you know, you're seeing, you know, steakhouses are doing delivery, you know, in gusto now. And so I think you're going to continue to see these trends. And I would actually say they're not trends and short-lived. These are changes that are here to stay.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. You know, when we look at the shift in consumer spending, the expectation is that over the next 12 months, you know, there's going to be a $6 billion shift from some of the traditional, you know, restaurant spending and grocery to the online environment. Interested, you know, Manoj and Royal, from your standpoint, do we think the volume of customers coming to on-premise is going to get back to pre-COVID levels on a consistent basis, you know, once this COVID craziness is behind us? Manoj, maybe you can kick us off.
At the same levels, it's tough to it's tough to say what's going to go back to norms, because I think it's a concept of going forward as well. I think different day parts will allow us to, and different types of scenarios will allow us to build incrementality as well. We noticed in the summer, and this is the case for a lot of full service restaurants, it was patio that was carrying us. It wasn't takeout and delivery, actually. It was patios that were carrying us. So there's a sense of norm that's going to come, but it's going to be what gives consumers most confidence, I think, more than anything. So if it happens to be different types of products and services that are required that build experiences through takeout and delivery, so rather than our current menu, future menus, whether it's like marketplaces or kits and things like that, I think that's we're gonna have to invest into there. I think it's going to take a while. I think maybe in 2021, I don't think it's going to be the case. 2022, I think people, like as Royal was saying, I think even as the vaccines show up, it's going to take time for this to distribute and get back to comfort. So I think we're going to see spikes in the market of interest. But I think it's going to allow us to, with this new behavioral change, allow us to build different types of businesses, which maybe get to the same levels of 2019, but in different ways, where dine-in and patio and takeout delivery all play a role, versus just being 99% dine-in. So I think it's going to be a variety of different types of experiences that are going to get us there versus just one single element of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, Royal, when you look at your business, more of the business is obviously moving to that digital space and will continue to move to that digital space. What are your thoughts? Are we going to see a return to the level of on-premise given the digital impact?
And I'm always very reticent to use the term normal, because I don't think there is going to be a normal, and I would liken this again to airport security post 9/11. It never went back to the way it was pre, and for a number of other extenuating reasons. But yes. I think it's a new normal. What does that look like? I think it's interesting that Manoj, alluded to day parts or occasion uses in patio, and we certainly saw the same thing where those locations that had some of the larger, more premier sort of spots for patios certainly did better, and we had better than half our chain during some of the nicer summer months do positive year over years, but also the occasion use for that dine-in. So are you going to go back to a pre-COVID level where each of your day parts look like this, your food splits look like this, and how guests interact with you, whether it's occasion-based boards, date night, after work, that sort of thing, happy hours. I think that's gone out the window. Something that we found quite interesting was that because of the work from home and schooling from home and how people's days have changed, and without the same kind of 9-to-5 rigidity or standard schedules, our day parts were basically spread out entirely throughout for a 12-hour period. So late night was a lot higher. Lunch had shifted more into mid-afternoon. There wasn't a set dinner period of 5 to 7 sort of thing. So I don't think you're ever going to get back to the way things were pre-COVID. Can you get back to the same levels in terms of just a guest count and dollars and sales? I absolutely believe you will, and I think that's based on consumer desire to socialize, to be out. I mean, those things don't change. The interaction, the desire to be out, the desire to be a part of a community, to be a part of something. Having watched the short Raptors playoff run, with one other person at home, it did not have the same appeal as being, with a large group of folks. So that's what's not going away. It's going to take some time for people to get more comfortable and to ease back into it. Absolutely, but restaurants exist for a reason, and all our internal surveying that we've done, just to cap it off, has really suggested that folks want to come back, and it's largely based on wanting to support their local businesses, wanting to interact with their community, wanting to socialize, that sort of thing. And COVID or no COVID, those intrinsic sort of human needs and wants are motivators.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, exactly. So we've now entered the Q&A period. So we've got about 10 minutes for Q&A and questions. So if anyone in the panel or audience like to submit their questions. Before we jump into the Q&A aspect of it, Royal, Manoj, just interested in understanding from your perspective, when we take a look at the landscape in the restaurant marketplace over the last number of years, Domino's did a really good job at coming out as a leader with a digital transformation and refer to their business as now a digital business versus as a restaurant. When you look at your business over the next 12 to 24 months and the business model, the traditional bricks and mortar, and the evolution you've gone through, describe what you see as your business model with the impact of digital over the next 12 to 24 months. Manoj, maybe you can kick it off.
Yeah, and the Domino's case study is like basically a book in terms of how you take market share leveraging digital. I think they ended up taking like 17 or 18% of total pizza share in globally or something like that after they implemented that type of strategy, which was amazing. For us, we do have a shift in business model. They'll talk about kind of the key areas of focus for us. We do continue to make sure that takeout delivery is a core priority for us. I think especially we believe that at least for the first 6 months of 2021, we'll see a very consistent view of the last half of 2020, right? So understanding that, that's going to be a significant focus for us. We've gone around in this panel in regards to guest experience, and I will harp on it one more time. I think for us, real-time feedback, responding to guests immediately when they have something in need, and understanding the context of their needs to redefine our future behavior because of that feedback is going to be really, really important. I think health and safety is table stakes, but it's going to be which aspects of health and safety are going to really drive consumer confidence from an operation perspective in regards to how we communicate that, whether it's through digital means or traditional means. I know that leading marketing, I'm going to be looking at primarily digital mediums, and the traditional stuff is going to be hard unless I get flexibility to book it where I'm not signed up for like 6 and 12-month contracts, because I need to be able to flex way more effectively going forward. Therefore, my owned mediums as well as digital mediums are going to be a very important way for us to invest. And I think as a company, like I said at the kind of the start of the conversation, to support this business model and this very noisy digital space, we're going to have to create experiences through design of menus, design of feature capabilities and products, as well as the how do we get that out there. So whether it's highlighting our chefs or community services and that type of capability, I think it's going to be really, really critical as we go forward. So that's how I kind of see our next 12 to 15 months.
Yeah, interesting. And Royal, same question to you. From you look at the business over the next 12 to 24 months.
It's hard to plan. I think it's safe to say, or at least we're banking on the same thing, Manoj, is that really the next 6 months or the first 6 months of 2021 will largely look like 2020, and certainly those investments in more traditional channels that are much more difficult to shift or pivot on the fly are going to be more prohibitive or cumbersome. But the flip side of that is with decreased guest traffic, that sort of thing, how do you continue to build on the brand experience and the lifestyle and all the extra things that go along with that, the intangibles really when it's through digital properties, and that's one of the tougher things to do simply through messaging. So that's something that we've spent a lot of time focusing on and trying to double down and reinforce what St. Louis means to our guests, without them actually being able to visit the brick and mortar in a lot of circumstances. So as I said, it's internally, we like to say it's impossible to plan past lunch these days, but I think that what we've seen in the past few months and what we'll see leading up to the holidays will largely be pretty big predictors of what the first half will be. And then, we're going to shift back to patios becoming, again, a bigger component of the business. And I'm hoping that will act as a bridge to get us to the fall where ideally we're more on the other side of this and people are more willing to come out and it evens out a little bit more.
Yes, and Brian, from your perspective, we've got a few minutes left. Closing thoughts. What do you expect the digital frontier to look like in the food service space over the next 12 to 24 months?
Oh, I think you're going to see a lot of next level experiences. We're working on some with a number of our clients right now. Really fine tuning. I think the term omni-channel was used earlier. You're going to see more and more ways to order and interact with brands. Domino's was one of the earlier leaders in the space with the number of different ways you could get an order in. So I think you're going to see the number of ways that a consumer can interact with the brand. The brands are getting better. They have overnight, really. We've been working with some brands and they've been making some huge changes and some huge improvements. You'll see more investments. I think, when you look at delivery as a channel, you look at the host kitchens or the restaurants that don't even have, a place to come sit. I think you'll see more of that too. So I actually feel really optimistic now, based on what I've seen over the last 6 months since this started. I'm excited to see what comes.
Dan, final thoughts, future trends from a digital standpoint that we should be aware of?
I get the cleanup position. This is no pressure. I would say two things. I mean, I agree obviously with everything that's been brought up. So I think if there were two things I could add, one is that, it's not an either or. I think as we go forward, we're just going to really see more and more of this integrating of digital with everyday life, whether it's what we call brick and mortar or whatever. I mean, it's user experience. UX isn't just about the design of a website, and user experience isn't just about the way that we get served when we come in. The two really can combine to give us some very interesting results. And I think the more that we kind of look at using that way, using it creatively, where at times it's going to be about marketing, but other times it's going to be about customer service, and it's going to really be about that feedback loop. So I think that's going to be a big one. And then the other is really going to be about I think what's going to be interesting is what people are going to do with what they're given. Whether you're a QSR or whether you're a full service, or it's impacted us all differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think digital is a great democratizer. It's you don't have to be a major player anymore to have an impactful campaign, or to use tools creatively to grow your business. So smaller players are all of a sudden, the playing field has been evened, and small players can do some pretty incredible things. So I think it's going to be very interesting. But I agree. I like Royal's outlook. There's going to be an after party to this thing, and
Sure.
it's going to be awesome. So get ready for it, because there's going to be some volume. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, great. A couple questions coming in from the audience. So first question geared more towards the operators on the panel. Question is, when you working with your vendor partners and your digital strategies and your operations implementing digital technology, are your suppliers and vendors providing enough support, or is there an opportunity for suppliers and vendors to be helping out a little bit more? Manoj, maybe you want to kick that off.
Yep, and this is a timely one for us as well. I think sometimes there's capability with the vendors that you actually don't know about. So sometimes you actually have to actively ask for it, so they might be a little bit more passive that way. But when you do, I think our beverage partners especially have stepped up big time in a couple ways. Even as simple as showing us how to photograph an image appropriately to try to get the best experience to sell a product. I think that's important. And then in some cases, helping us drive following through social media, through contesting. Additionally, packaging our menu items with their products to try to sell them effectively in bundles and packages and deals like that. So I think if you don't leverage that to me, that's almost like this free capability that if you don't take advantage of it, it's actually a big miss. So even if they're not offering, I think you should proactively reach out to it, because for us it's been heavily successful looking at just the vendor component, because that one's kind of top of mind for me right now.
Great.
The beverage side, sorry.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, good.
I think they have a unique set of insights as well that we may not have on the operator side, because they can see things from 10,000 feet and certainly aggregate a number of businesses. And I think Manoj is absolutely right. I mean, if some are better than others, and you need to be, in many cases, actively soliciting that feedback and that information. And quite often there's a lot out there that you don't know what you don't know, but they're not always forthcoming. And I think it's largely what I've seen has just been a resource piece, and you need to go out and chase that data, get the insights, look for best practices, what's working, what have they seen, and then certainly put the onus on them to help. I mean, we're all in this together, and what helps us will obviously help them, certainly on the supplier side, and even from the third-party aggregators, that sort of thing. If they're not investing and putting skin in the game and really stepping up, I think it's a myth, and you've got to chase it down, or else I think you're missing opportunities and being irresponsible potentially.
Robert, one more thing. I think it's in their best interest to help you, because their success is their success at the end of the day in terms of volume. And to kind of Rael's point, I think one thing I failed to mention was I think the research that they have available through different demos across Canada and the US it's fantastic that you can leverage that in your strategies as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and a good point. And on that, well, I'll ask the panelists to remain. We're going to invite Jacob back. He has some closing comments, but on behalf of myself and the StratonHunter Group, thanks for your participation today, gentlemen. It was a great conversation. Thanks for all the attendees. And if you have any further questions or you'd like to communicate, hit me up on LinkedIn or reach out to any of our panelists overall. So thanks, gentlemen. Great conversation. And with that, I'll bring Jacob. You're going to join us and take us over the finish line.
Right.
There you are.
Yeah, here I am. All right, thanks, Robert, and the panel, guys. That was great, very insightful, very informative. So really appreciate it. Yeah, that's a wrap for this year's Canadian Restaurant Investment and Leadership Summit. So again, thanks to the panel. Thank you to our sponsors for their participation and their support of this event. And most importantly, thanks to the audience who has joined us throughout this week. I do sincerely hope we can do something live and in person next year. And if we can't, we will be back and doing it in some format like this, creative and interesting, and certainly look to bring you updates and insight on the industry and what's going on. So again, thanks very much, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Take care.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks, everyone. Get out to your local restaurants, everybody. Thanks.